Hey everybody, welcome back to another 3-minute Devo. Let's go ahead and jump right in. So our passage today is Romans chapter 3, verses 1 through 4 is what we're going to look at today. So last time we talked about the fact that God showed his love in that he separated and he protected. First of all, he created the nation of Israel out of the person of Abraham, right? He said, I'm going to make you a great nation. And then he insulated, he protected, and he allowed this nation of Israel to grow from a family to a nation. And by the time they came out of Egypt, they were no longer a family. They were a nation of people. And it's crazy when you think they were in Egypt for 400 years. And it's, obviously it's a big deal in the Bible, but that's, almost twice as long as the United States has been a nation. And so there was a lot of growth that took place, and they went from being a family to being a nation. And then they came out and they were able to be the hand of God on the world and to be the tool that God used. But ultimately God said, but this isn't all that I have. Everything belongs to me. All the people groups belong to me. And when he sent Jesus, he said, I'm taking people from every tribe, from every tongue, from every nation. They are a part of my family. And then in that same vein, that same idea, Paul then asks the question, he says, so then what advantage has the Jew? In other words, what's the point of all of that? What advantage do we have? He's a Jewish person, and he was learned and taught, and he was well versed in the ways of Judaism. He said, what's the advantage of it? And he says, much in every way. To begin with, the Jews were entrusted with the oracles of God, and what that means is they were entrusted with the Jewish people received the word of God from the prophets, from Moses, through the law. They were actually able to receive the word of God. Earlier in this chapter, we saw that there's no excuse for anybody on the planet because the things of God are visible if you just look at the world around you. You can see God in all of it. Not that the tree is God, but you can see, just like when you look at a piece of art, you can see something of the artist. When you look at creation, when you look at the world, you can see something of its creator. But the Jewish people had the oracles of God. In other words, they had the word of God. But then he goes on and he says, but what if some of them were, this is verse 3, what if some were unfaithful? Does their faithlessness nullify the faithlessness of God? And then he says in verse 4, by no means let God be true, though everyone were a liar, as it is written, that you may be justified in your words and prevail when you are judged. That's talking about God. In other words, God is faithful even when we are faithless. I'm going to make this really, really granular, real fast, all the way down to maybe you right now. One thing that I have seen in the church is that we tend to apply the character of God to situations that are not about God. I mean, okay, that's weird. That's a weird way of saying it. This is what I've seen. I've seen when people get hurt by other people in the church, they put the blame at the feet of Jesus and they walk away from God altogether. I can't tell you how many people I've heard or seen or talked to that say, I left the church and I walked away from Christianity because of church hurt. Just because someone else is faithless does not mean that God is not faithful. Just because someone else doesn't properly walk out what God is putting in them doesn't mean that God is faithless. God is faithful. He is faithful to do in you what he said he was going to do. And so Paul is saying, even though the Jewish people walked away or did not acknowledge the Messiah in Jesus, their faithlessness does not nullify the faithfulness of God. So take heart. The shortcomings of people in your life do not nullify, they do not negate the faithfulness of God. Thanks so much for joining us for another 3-Minute Devo. We'll see you next time.